Hello to all you Biconics wrestling nerds out there, and welcome to another edition of your Friday Night Faction Review for WWE Smackdown. I am your host, Mikey, and as you could tell, I'm rocking it solo this week. My other co hosts were busy for this review, but fear not, they will be back for this review next week. But as I mentioned, I am here to cover this week's SmackDown episode for Friday, December 1st, 2023. We are now officially put Survivor Series in the rear view, and now we are slowly building towards Royal Rumble season, which is Saturday, January 27th. There was a lot that happened this episode, so why don't we just dive straight into it? SmackDown this week opens up with a promo from the EST of WWE, Bianca Belair herself. And essentially, what this is, it serves as a recap for War Games for the women's match. Bianca puts over Charlotte, she puts over Becky, she puts over Shotzi, and then she pivots her promo stating that she's not done trying to chase for the championship. And at this point, this is where she is interrupted by Damage Control. Though it is Asuka, Io, Kyrie, and Dakota Kai, but no Bailey. The writing is on the wall, you guys. Bailey is already entering her era of being kicked out of the group when the time comes. But Dakota Kai talks about how Io has beat Bianca twice already. And if Bianca wants a shot at Io's championship, she's going to have to defeat every single member of Damage Control. Now, when Dakota said this, obviously we know that Bianca's going to have to go through Kyrie and Asuka. Now, since Dakota is still not cleared yet, I'm assuming that the third person has to be Bailey. And given that we have a couple of weeks until Royal Rumble happens, it would make sense for Bailey to be included in that. But it was very interesting to see Dakota Kai kind of take over the leadership spot, and Bailey wasn't out there. Now, the numbers game does get to Bianca as Damage Control tries to surround the ring, but Bianca's team from War Games, Charlotte and Shotzi, even the odds, which makes Damage Control kind of back off after a brawl looked like it was about to break out, but Damage Control decided to fight another day. Essentially, this sets up our main wrestling event match of the evening where we will see Bianca Belair take on Kyrie Sane. We jump into our backstage segment which sees Damage Control talking about everything that went down in the opening segment. And though and behold, Bailey shows up and she talks to Damage Control about not being out there. Like if she was out there, they could have been fine. And, she could have helped out. Bailey's trying her best to be a use to the group, but the group is already not having Bailey. They don't like her. They want her to stay in the back. They want her to stay put. The writing once again is on the walls, and eventually Bailey is going to get thrown out, and I'm kind of excited to see what happens with this. From here, we get our first match of the night, which sees Butch taking on Bobby Lashley. I thought this was a fine match. Again, we're continuing on the storyline that has been happening. The Brawling Brutes seem to be no more, with Ridge Holland leaving Butch in the middle of their tag team match against Pretty Deadly last week, high and dry. So now Butch is on a lone warpath. I just want Butch to revert back to Pete Dunne, but that's neither here nor there. And I can't necessarily argue with how Triple H is booking Butch. But I thought this was an okay match. Butch gets a little bit of the offense in. He does his finger breaks and things like that. But of course, Bobby Lashley does Bobby Lashley things and he hits him with the spear for the 1, 2, 3. Bobby Lashley picks up the victory right here. I don't know what we're doing with Bobby and the Street Profits per se. They were involved in this feud with LWO, but now that Santos has kind of taken the lead for said storyline with the LWO and the Rey Mysterio, I'm not sure what we're doing with Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits. I'm hoping that as 2024 begins in a few weeks, I'm hoping to see Bobby Lashley and the Street Profits do something because they're kind of just spinning their wheels right now. And the same can be applied to Butch. I know we just had the breakup between him and Ridge Holland last week, but I'm very interested to see what his plans are going to be moving forward. From here, WWE has this biggest issue, and it's not one of necessarily my favorites, but we get a very lengthy recap of what went down during the men's War Games Survivor Series match. Again, if you haven't watched the pay per view, I totally recommend watching it because it was a moment in time. And I thought it was a pretty good pay per view. But basically, they recap the whole men's War Game match in a matter of like 7 minutes. And SmackDown, I need you guys to not do this because the majority of us who watch the weekly product know what went down at Survivor Series. But again, this is the first show post Survivor Series, so you got to make sure that people who didn't watch the pay per view understand what's going on the TV show. But I hoping that 2024 and the rest of the year sees both Raw and SmackDown not question my intelligence as a viewer. But again, the Randy Orton returning, CM Punk returning to WWE. If you didn't know, in the words, now you know. From here, this leads into another backstage segment, which sees Paul Heyman and Nick Aldis having a, you know, conversation. Nick Aldis tells Paul Heyman because Paul Heyman is trying to gaslight his way to try to make sure that Randy Orton doesn't sign to SmackDown and that Roman Reigns is going to handle it and everything needs to go through Roman Reigns. But Nick Aldis is not having it. And he says that I want Randy here on SmackDown. He's going to be a good asset to the roster. And if I have to give the whole entire bloodline for Randy to sign with SmackDown, then so be it. I love that we get a general manager who's not afraid to go against the top stars and the top heel on SmackDown, which is Roman Reigns and the rest of the bloodline, because Nick Aldis just does not care. And so Paul Heyman is a little worried, so he goes and leaves to go make a phone call, which I'm assuming is going to be to Roman Reigns. Again, Nick Aldis has become a really fun on screen personality addition for SmackDown. And again, I love a GM that does not care and will do whatever it takes to make business happen. We get another backstage segment where we see Butch being interviewed about what's next for him, and Pretty Deadly enter the scene. They make fun of him, and then it becomes a 2-on-1 beatdown as Pretty Deadly beat down Butch. I love Pretty Deadly. I think they're hilarious, but I also feel that we're kind of spinning our wheels here. Now that the Brawling Brutes are no more, are we to assume that Sheamus is coming back to fix all this? Who knows at this point? Then we get another recap. Let me tell you, the first hour of SmackDown this week was nothing but recaps and backstage segments. It was not a lot of wrestling, where we get a recap of Santos Escobar's heel turn, how he turned on Rey Mysterio. He's out on injury for a couple months because of Santos. He had a match against Dragon Lee, and he's continuing to be this heel, which then leads into, which I was surprised to see, a singles match between Santos Escobar and his friend turned enemy Joaquin Wild. Obviously, this match didn't last that long, and I knew that Santos wasn't going to lose here, so Santos easily picks up the victory against Joaquin Wild, and then the post match beatdown of his former friend happens, which then prompts Dragon Lee to come on out to make the save for the day. Listen, if we could continue to get Santos and Dragon Lee as a feud, I am all here for it. I would love to see them do a trilogy match. While I know a lot of people hate having trilogy matches in WWE, if they are good talent, let them, because it's so good to see them do that. But Dragon Lee coming in for the save prompts Santos to get the heck out of Dodge. And we are just continuing to have this feud between Santos and Dragon Lee, and more so Santos versus all of LWO. From here, once again, we head back to backstage where this time we see Raw general manager Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis trying to figure out who is going to end up signing Randy Orton. Adam Pearce wants Randy, Nick Aldis wants Randy, and both of them are going to do what they're going to try to do tonight to get Randy to sign to their brand. Again, I love general manager characters that aren't afraid to go above and beyond wrestlers. But on top of that, I love to see general managers actually have personality and act like general managers. Again, on screen personalities like that are great to have. From here, we get a little bit of a lengthy in ring promo. This time, we see your United States champion, Logan Paul, come out. Yeah, I'm still not used to saying that. But your United States champion, Logan Paul, comes out and he basically talks about, which basically how he's going to find his next opponent. Over the next couple of weeks, we're going to hold a tournament in which we're going to see a bunch of the SmackDown stars compete. This tournament is going to be made up of 7 SmackDown stars and an NXT participant, but who knows who that's going to be. And what ends up happening is that the winner of this tournament will go on to face Logan Paul for the United States Championship. Logan is interrupted by one Kevin Owens, and basically Kevin Owens just run downs Logan Paul that he doesn't like him, nobody likes him, and he's going to win this tournament and he's going to take that title from Logan Paul. SmackDown, I think, just showed their hand unless somebody gets involved like Grayson Waller and Austin Theory and ruins KO's chances of winning this tournament. Honestly, Kevin Owens is really the only person I see going to the end so he can face off against Logan Paul for this United States Championship. This leads into a match, not in the tournament, but it just leads to a singles match. Grayson Waller taking on Kevin Owens. Again, Grayson Waller has become one of my favorite heels on SmackDown, and I love seeing him do so well here. This was a fun match. I love anytime Kevin Owens is in the ring. And honestly, for me personally, this is probably my match of the night. Even though I love Bianca and Kyrie, which we'll talk about a little bit later, I think Kevin Owens versus Grayson Waller had everything I wanted from wrestling to comedy spots. And then Logan Paul on commentary just added an extra dimension to it, which I thought was a really fun time. Of course, Kevin Owens picks up the victory here. And we'll see what happens with this United States tournament happening next week. Once again, we go into another recap, which talks about the return of CM Punk at Survivor Series. And we got a recap of his promo for Monday Night Raw this past week. And we are told that CM Punk is going to be on SmackDown next week as part of Tribute of the Troops special episode. So this should be interesting to see. We get our main event wrestling match of the evening, which sees Bianca Belair taking on Kairi Sane. And the stipulation here is that Bianca needs to beat every single member of Damage Control in order for her to get a championship match against Io again for the Women's Championship. I thought this was a really fun match. I will say that it does look a little bit like Kyrie and Bianca took a little bit of time to click and connect with each other, but once they did, then the second half of the match took off, whereas the first half was kind of a little bit more slow paced than I'd like. The important thing from this match is that Bayley, not listening to Damage Control when they told her to stay put in the back, she comes out to try to help Kyrie, and she throws Kyrie back into the wing and distracts Bianca Belair. And as Bayley is celebrating and gloating about what a good job she did, it's allowed Bianca to pick up Kyrie and to pin her for the win. And so Bayley indirectly cost Damage Control the match, and Bianca only needs to beat Asuka, and who I'm assuming is going to be Bayley. So Bianca took down one Damage Control member, so now she has to take down 2 more if she wants her championship match against Io, which I'm gonna assume if it's not on SmackDown, it's gonna be at the Royal Rumble. I'm also loving that Bayley is trying to be a good teammate. She's trying to be a team player, but inadvertently, she keeps costing everybody these mistakes. So I'm very interested to see how the next couple of weeks happen with Bayley and what is going to further develop with this Damage Control split storyline that's happening. We then get into the main event segment this week of SmackDown, where Randy Orton comes to the ring and, figuring out if he's going to sign with SmackDown or for Raw. Before Randy makes a decision, Paul Heyman and Solo Sikoa, as well as Jimmy Uso, come down, and Paul Heyman doesn't even let Randy talk or try do the signing right away. Paul Heyman says that he is going to make the decision for Randy as he sends in Solo and Jimmy to try to beat down Randy Orton. But Papa Orton ain't backing down. He takes out Solo. He takes out Jimmy, and he's just going buck wild. He demands that Adam Pearce and Nick Aldis give him the contracts. Randy Orton looks at both of them, throws away the Raw contract, signs the SmackDown one, and then lets Paul Heyman know that Roman thinks he runs SmackDown, but Daddy's back, and he is going to make sure that he gets every single Bloodline member 1-2. And again, we celebrate in the ring. Nick Aldis is overjoyed, and then Randy Orton hits an RKO on Nick Aldis as Randy Orton celebrates in the ring to conclude SmackDown this week. Overall, my final rating for this, I give this a solid here on the Friday Night Faction. We use the mini scale. So out of 10 minis, I give this a solid 7.5 minis out of 10. I really hated the first hour of SmackDown, mostly being backstage segments and recaps with not a lot of wrestling. But the second half of SmackDown this week, I thought was a lot better. We're setting up Logan Paul actually being a defending champion, which is shocking given the fact that Roman Reigns is your main champion and hasn't defended that thing forever since the last time he did it, which is fine. It is what it is. I really love and I'm invested in the damage control storyline and Bailey getting thrown out of it eventually. Randy Orton on SmackDown, I think, is going to help out so much, revitalize the Bloodline storyline, especially since Roman is not there every single week. I love that Logan Paul is actually putting a tournament together, so we're going to get some fun matches with the men's roster on SmackDown for the United States Championship. And overall, I give it a 7.5 out of 10. I thought this was a pretty decent episode. I just want to see more storyline builds, and I don't want to see a lot of recaps and a lot of backstage segments. SmackDown needs to be able to place these in certain spots and in better places in order to make it flow better. But that is going to be it for this week's Friday Night Faction review. Unfortunately, this was a short one, but given the fact that we are just coming off the heels of Survivor Series, we now have about 8 to 9 weeks to build towards Royal Rumble season. So hopefully we take our time with this build and they decide to build the stories that we love to see. And hopefully we have some good feuds leading into the pay-per-view on January 27th. That is going to be it for Friday Night Faction Review. If you like this, you can check out other Friday Night Faction reviews as well as other reviews here at the Biconics Wrestling Podcast channel. Make sure you hit that bell notification, subscribe, share the YouTube channel with all your favorite peoples. Put us on as background noise. We're not judging, but we are doing some fun stuff here, and we like to thank everyone that's joined us on this journey so far. If you want to get notifications on when videos go live, make sure to follow us all over the social medias at BC WrestlePod. You can also check us out on the social medias to see out of context clips of all our reviews and as some fun meme stuff around. We're having a great time. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, make sure to subscribe to the Biconics Wrestling Podcast, where we pretty much talk about wrestling. That is not a review. We just wrapped up our last episode of this year where we looked at 2023 and we reviewed the highs and the lows, and we all got to talk about the best and the worst that 2023 had to offer in the world of professional wrestling. My name is Mikey, and from the rest of the Friday Night Faction boys, as well as the rest of us here at the Biconics, remember, take care of yourself, love one another, and as always, stay biconic, you beautiful bastards. We'll see you for the next review. But until then, ta-ta for now.